The salvage vessel Crimson Talon drifted through the debris field like a predator searching for prey. Captain Zixtha, a seasoned draconian with scales that had dulled from chrome to pewter over her 3 centuries of spacefaring, commanded, her crew with the efficiency of someone who had seen every corner of the galaxy's underbelly. Another human vessel, her second in command, Korath, announced from the sensor station. His younger scales still gleamed with the metallic sheen of youth. Looks like a colony ship, dead in space for cycles at least. Zixtha's inner eyelids flicked dismissively. Humans were uncommon this far out in the outer rim, their expansion having stalled after the Great Plague Wars. Most of their ships they encountered were derelicts, picked clean by other salvage crews or pirates. Still, protocol demanded investigation. "Life signs?" she asked, though she expected none. "Negative on the main vessel." Korath paused, his forked tongue testing the air as Draconians did when concentrating. "Wait, there's something. Faint biosignatures in the emergency pod bay, very faint." Zixtha's crew was efficient. Within an hour, they had docked with the human vessel and begun their sweep. The ship was indeed dead. Life support had failed, and the cold vacuum had claimed its passengers long ago. But in the emergency pod bay, sealed behind blast doors that had somehow held, they found something extraordinary. A human infant, perhaps. 8 months old by their species' development standards, lay sleeping in a crude but functional life support cradle. Beside the child, curled in a protective circle, was a dragon hatchling no bigger than Zixtha's forearm. "Impossible," breathed Korath, his weapon lowering. "Dragons we don't bond with other species. Ever. It's not in our nature." But there it was. The tiny dragon, its scales a brilliant emerald green that marked it as barely weeks old, had positioned itself between the human child and the rest of the room. When the boarding party had entered, the hatchling had reared up on its hind legs, wings spread in a threat display that would have been adorable if it weren't so deadly. Serious. The baby human stirred, making soft cooing sounds. Immediately, the dragon hatchling relaxed, nuzzling against the infant's cheek with a gentleness that defied everything Zixtha knew about her species. "Captain," one of her crew members called, from across the bay. "You need to see this." They had found a data pad, its power cell nearly dead but still functional. The logs told a story that would have sounded like fiction if they hadn't witnessed the evidence firsthand. Dr. Elena Vasquez, xenobiologist aboard the colony ship New Dawn, had been conducting research on draconian reproductive cycles when the plague hit. In her final entries, she described how the dragon egg in her lab had hatched just as the ship's life support began failing. The hatchling had immediately gravitated toward her infant son, Marcus, showing protective behaviors that contradicted every scientific paper ever written about draconian psychology. "The hatchling seems to recognize Marcus as family," Dr. Vasquez had written. "I've sealed us in the emergency pod bay with the last functional life support unit. If anyone finds this, the dragon isn't aggressive. It's protective. They've formed some kind of bond that I don't understand, but I won't separate them. Marcus is all I have left, and somehow this little dragon knows that." The entries ended there. Now, 3 weeks later aboard the Crimson Talon, the unlikely pair had become the talk of the ship. The dragon hatchling, which Marcus had somehow learned to call Ember in his babbling attempts at speech, refused to leave the human child's side. When Marcus slept, Ember curled around his feet. When Marcus cried, Ember would croon in harmonics that seemed to soothe the infant instantly. "It's not natural," Korath muttered, watching through the observation window as Marcus crawled across the floor of the makeshift nursery they'd constructed, Ember flying alongside him with the unsteady wing beats of youth. "Perhaps," Zixtha replied, though her tone suggested she'd begun to doubt what was natural anymore. "But it's remarkable." The crew had initially planned to drop the pair at the nearest human settlement, but as days passed, Zixtha found herself hesitating. The dragon hatchling was technically draconian property. Their species had strict laws about their young. Yet Ember showed no interest in other dragons, becoming agitated whenever separated from Marcus even briefly. "They're communicating," Dr. Reth, the ship's medic, reported during one of their daily observations. "Not in any language I recognize, but watch their patterns. When Marcus reaches for something, Ember anticipates it. When Ember grows restless, Marcus starts fussing. It's like they share a neural link." The breakthrough came during their 5th week together. Marcus, now crawling with impressive speed, had managed to get himself trapped under a storage crate in the cargo bay. His cries echoed through the ship's corridors, but before any crew member could respond, Ember had somehow activated the ship's intercom system, broadcasting the location with a series of precise clicks and harmonics. "Did that hatchling just use our communications array?" Korath asked in disbelief. They found Ember standing on the console, tiny claws having manipulated the controls with impossible precision. The dragon looked up at them with ancient eyes that seemed far too knowing for such a young creature, then flew directly to where Marcus was trapped. "The legends," Zixtha whispered, a memory stirring from her childhood. "The old stories about the first bonds before our species became territorial. The ancient draconian texts spoke of a time when their people formed symbiotic relationships with other species, bonds that transcended normal understanding. Most modern draconians dismissed these as myth, but watching Marcus giggle as Ember performed aerial acrobatics for his entertainment, Zixtha wondered if they had forgotten something important about their own nature. Months passed. The Crimson Talon became something unprecedented. A ship where human and draconian coexisted in perfect harmony. Marcus grew stronger, his first clear words being Ember and fly. Ember developed abilities that astounded even Zixtha: problem-solving, skills, emotional intelligence, and a protective instinct that extended beyond Marcus to the entire crew. When they finally reached the human colony world of New Geneva, Zixtha faced an impossible choice. The human authorities wanted Marcus. The Draconian High Council, having learned of Ember's existence, demanded the hatchling's return. Neither authority had reckoned with the bond itself. As officials from both species argued in the docking bay, Marcus took his first uncertain steps across the deck. Ember flew beside him, ready to catch him if he fell. When Marcus stumbled, Ember was there. When Ember grew tired from flying, Marcus held out his small arms to provide a perch. "You cannot separate them," Zixtha declared, her voice carrying the authority of her centuries. "They are no longer two beings, they are something new." The human colony administrator started to object, but Marcus chose that moment to babble something in a mixture of human words and draconian harmonics. Ember responded in kind, their conversation incomprehensible to everyone else, but clearly meaningful to them. In the end, it was Marcus and Ember who chose their own fate. They chose the stars, the ship that had become their home, and the crew that had become their family. Zixtha found herself captain not just of a salvage vessel, but of something unprecedented in galactic history, a truly integrated crew. As the Crimson Talon departed New Geneva, Marcus sat in his custom pilot chair, Ember perched on his shoulder. Both of them gazed out at the stars with the same expression of wonder, ready for whatever the galaxy might hold. The bond that had begun in tragedy had become something beautiful, a bridge between species, a glimpse of what the future might hold when different worlds chose to grow together instead of apart.